Hey guys, it's your host Elex, and I just want to say thank you for tuning in to another episode of Mental Mixology. All right, friends, today we are talking about accountability, and I want to dedicate this episode to my dad. Honestly, I don't think I could do this episode without the way he raised me. My dad raised my sister and I to be so accountable to where people honestly tell us sometimes that we are overly accountable. Being accountable has not only helped with my self confidence, but it has also helped with my anxiety. And because of those two things, I thought it was really important to be able to go through why a lot of us kind of tend, or it might be just easier, to fall back on excuses, for why we do things a certain way, for not getting things done. Being accountable can be very hard. And I say this because there are definitely certain areas of my life where I'm really good about accountability, and there are others where I'm not as good with accountability. Unfortunately, I think we live in a generation where accountability just really, you don't see it in people as much. I am not going to let you, my listeners, be someone in this world that is just down in the dumps because you're not being accountable when and in places where you can. I'm telling you, it will change your life. It will leave a positive impact on your life. So, we're going to get into accountability, what it is, what the science behind it is, and how you can be more accountable every single day. So, the thing about accountability is a lot of people think that accountability means blame when it doesn't. We think of it that way because normally we are having to be accountable when things go wrong. But accountability is even working out, your body. For me, for example, I love working out. I work out hard. But the flip side to that is my diet kind of freaking sucks. And I can be mad and pissed off at the fact that I'm working out so hard in the gym and I'm not seeing results. But until I'm accountable for the things I'm eating in my diet, I can't be mad because or I take that back. The only person I can be mad at is myself. I'm working out hard. I want this goal, but since I'm not holding myself accountable to what I need to be doing to truly get there, I can't blame anybody but myself. Holding yourself accountable is simply taking responsibility of your life so you can finally change the things that aren't working or going right. We don't need to look at accountability as some kind of punishment. It is genuinely a power move. And if your brain looks at accountability as a punishment, tell yourself it's not. It is a way for you to start gaining trust within yourself. And that's the best way to look at it is you want to look at yourself as someone who does exactly what they say they're going to do. And if you think about it, that's what we associate with successful people is they do what they say they're going to do. If you really want to power up your life, if you really want to get to the places you want to be, if you really want to better the relationships with the people in your life, I'm telling you, accountability is a hack to doing that. And it really simply is because taking responsibility for your life, it's life changing. So many positive things happen when you finally take control over things that you do have control over. The thing about accountability, too, that we have to keep in mind is there truly is science behind why being accountable is so hard for us. Because a lot of us, when it comes time to be accountable, we hide behind excuses. We think we're protecting ourselves. And in the moment, it feels like we are, but you need to realize that hiding behind excuses is only hurting yourself more. It's only keeping you from the place you want to be at longer. And now we're going to talk about the science behind why excuses are so easy to hide behind, and it's so much easier to make excuses for things versus being accountable, okay? Now, we talk about the amygdala a lot. The amygdala really is the root of a lot of these mental health topics that we talk about when it comes down to the science. And it's because our amygdala is the control center of our brain. And in this instance, your internal alarm system is the amygdala, okay? So basically, your amygdala is the emotional part of your brain that reacts before you even have time to think. So this helps your body decide how it's going to react to stress. Now, why this is so detrimental when it comes to accountability is because when we're confronted with a mistake we've made, our amygdala can perceive that as failure. And it's a threat to our social standing or our self image. So, to protect us from the pain of being wrong, our brain triggers a defense response, often an excuse, to shift the blame away and lower our immediate cortisol levels. So, your brain honestly thinks it's helping you, but it's not. And this is where we have to manipulate the amygdala because your brain thinks when you do something wrong, it doesn't want you to think that you're a bad person. You forget to take out the trash, you forget to submit a document at work. You're not a terrible person. You're human, but your brain wants to protect yourself so much that as soon as you do something wrong, that excuse that just comes right after, the excuses will never protect you, will never make a situation easier, okay? And to be completely honest with you, if you get in the habit of always shifting the blame in your life, you're never going to know any differently. And I say this because this is why it's really important to be accountable. Because I promise if it's not affecting your life, it will probably affect the lives of other people. And I dated somebody who truly realizing their parents and the dynamic of their family, they were never taught to be accountable. I am very confident this person's parents never held them accountable for anything ever in their lives. And is it that person's fault? No, it's not. But that doesn't give them excuses to not be accountable as they grow up. And I say this because the person I dated who had this issue, I felt like I was being their mom. I felt like I was trying to teach this person lessons about accountability that their parents never did. You know, when I grew up and my dad was teaching me to be accountable, I hated it. And to be honest, I got really frustrated with him because I didn't understand the point in being accountable. I did not understand the good in it. And it really was hard in this relationship because for a long time, the lack of accountability, I just kind of ignored it. It's like, you know what? It's whatever, it's fine. Listen to the excuses. But then you get really sick of it and you want people to be accountable. You want them to see like being accountable is a good thing. It's going to help you and it's also going to help me in our relationship if you're more accountable. It sucked because instead of being this person's partner, I felt like I was their mom trying to teach them things that they didn't know, but then they were looking at me as the bad guy for it. And no offense, but it's not my place to have to teach you to be accountable. And it's not fair to me that you're getting mad at me like I was getting mad at my dad because you don't understand this, just like I didn't understand it. Because my point is it's normal to be a little uncomfortable. Not even a little bit, a lot of it uncomfortable when it comes to accountability. It's an uncomfortable thing at first, and it's still uncomfortable to me. It gets better and easier because I've been in this mindset for a very long time. It really is important, not just for yourself, but if you're in a relationship, you're working with other people, it will start to bleed into other areas of your life. And it becomes hard for other people to work with, to live with, to deal with. So truly let this be a time to self-reflect because I think all of us, none of us are perfect people. We can all find ways to just kind of hack accountability, to be able to really grab life by the trousers and be like, you know what? I'm going to own my shit and I'm going to take control of my life. Because being accountable is honestly the key in taking control of your life. But basically, to kind of end on the amygdala thing, you know, if our brains are not trained to be accountable, that defense mechanism of the excuses will always be the first thing that hits or the first part of the conversation. So be conscious of that, okay? Because really, I think I hate saying this, but we almost have to kind of manipulate the amygdala to be able to avoid these natural responses our brains want to make to things going on in our lives. So you do have to be cognizant of these things. Okay, so moving on to part 2 of the science behind why excuses are just so much easier than being accountable, okay? So cognitive dissonance. I did not know what dissonance meant either, but we are going to explain it here, okay? So we all have a mix of how we see ourselves, and usually it's as good, capable people. But when our actions don't match that self-image, like dropping the ball on a commitment, it creates a cognitive dissonance and an uncomfortable mental tension. So, like I said, our brains, when it comes time for us to be accountable, it tries to protect us. And it's so sweet of our brains to try to do that, but just because you make a mistake, it does not mean you are a bad person. Perfect is not something any of us can obtain, but we think we can. So when we are not perfect, it's like, okay, hold on, hold on, hold on. I'm too good of a person to have let this happen. And that's kind of where the excuses come from. Let's make a prime example, okay? You tell your partner that you're going to take out the trash, or that's kind of like your unspoken duty in the household. You're going to roll the trash up to the curb because the trash truck comes every Thursday. Well, Thursday morning comes, you oversleep a little bit, you didn't pack your lunch, you can't figure out your outfit, like your morning's just getting derailed. And lo and behold, you forget to put the trash up to the road, so the trash people don't come, and you got a full trash can for a whole week until they can come again. Instead of going home to your partner and telling them all the excuses of why you didn't get the trash can up because you're telling yourself, I'm still a good person. I'm still a great partner. You think that to yourself and your brain back on the excuses of, I'm too good of a person. Like, I'm not a bad person for this. This, and this are the reasons why. Well, this is why you have to train your brain, is because you're not a bad person. You made a mistake. But the best way to go forward from your mistake is not beating around the bush, trying to make excuses for what you did wrong. You say it with your chest and you say, you know what? I should have probably rolled it up Wednesday night knowing I could have had a hectic morning. That's on me. I did not plan my morning well. That's on me. So, yeah, it sucked that now we have a trash can that's full until the next week, but I promise you, I will not forget this feeling and I won't let it happen again. And it's uncomfortable in that moment because you have to tell yourself, like, okay, we're not a bad person, but we did mess up and we have to learn from it. That's what you have to really start to channel within yourself is you're a good person, but you are going to make mistakes. You aren't going to do everything perfectly, and it's okay. But if you are not accountable, you're not going to truly learn from it. So, an excuse is the brain's shortcut for resolving that tension without changing our own self image. So, you still look at yourself as a good person, despite what had happened, okay, when you make an excuse. But ownership requires us to sit with the discomfort and admit the messy reality of our mistake, which takes more mental energy, like ripping off a band aid, okay? Now, I'm gonna use a real time example of how ownership can honestly get you so much farther than trying to make excuses. And you just feel better overall, okay? So I read at my local church. I do like the first and second reading, and I love it. We get emailed out the schedule, and then yeah, just make sure you're you're at church when you're scheduled. Well, I can honestly move a mile a minute, and this is my excuse. See, look, I'm leading with an excuse. It's normal. It's natural. I was about to just make an excuse and be like, I'm a busybody. I got a lot of irons in the fire. But back in the fall, it was weird too because I woke up that morning and like, do you ever feel like you're missing something? Like you can't put your finger on it, but I woke up and I'm like, something's not right. And I go and look at the church schedule and I realized I was supposed to read at church that morning. And it was already like 10 o'clock in the morning. So obviously church was over and I had a pit in my stomach. I was so mad at myself. I'm like, how could we let this slip in between the cracks? Genuinely, Elex. And so I was so anxious about it because I'm like, do I email the guy that runs all of it and like apologize? Do I act like it never happened and like just show up to the next time? Well, I didn't want them to take me off the schedule because I thoroughly love reading at church. And it was a genuine mistake, a genuine mistake. And so I say, I am so sorry. I should have double checked. I assure you that will not happen again. I am so sorry it happened in the first place. But the guy understood. He's like, you know what? You're a great reader. We love having you. Understand. But the thing is I will never let that happen again. I have learned my lesson, and instead of making excuses and not saying anything to the guy, there is probably a good chance that could have happened again. But with me owning it, sitting with that discomfort and being like, we are never letting this happen again. You know what? They probably could have been like, yeah, it's okay. We probably don't need any more readers. I don't know what could have happened in this situation, but I felt so much better moving forward. I wasn't going to the next church service like, oh my gosh, what if they hate me? 'Cause I'm the young girl who doesn't, stick to her commitments. I did not want to be that person, so I owned it so I could move on. Just like we're gonna move on to the next point in the science, okay? The negativity bias is number 3 in the science behind why excuses are so much easier than being accountable, okay? Humans are evolutionally wired to focus on the negative threats versus positive opportunities. Because of this, our brain views owning a mistake as the potential for rejection by the community. We run towards excuses because in the moment they feel like a safety shield against judgment. I think this holds true too, because when we give excuses, I want to say we're trying to have people understand us more, relate to us more, because that makes us owning up to something. It feels like it makes the blow worse. Like the punch to the face, it makes it feel like it doesn't hurt as much when you lay an excuse down first. Like when I was going to tell you guys about me missing church or reading at church, I was literally about to be like, I have a lot of irons in the fire. I was about to give you guys every excuse of why I missed the reading when it was literally just my fault and I did not write it down and I didn't I did not do my due diligence. I could give you every excuse in the book, but it's so important to be honest with yourself because you can't be honest with others. They can't be honest with you unless you start being honest with yourself. I know you guys don't think I'm a bad person because I missed this one reading. You know I'm human. And as people, we crave to be understood. And we hate when people don't understand us and they think we're bad people. But I guarantee if you make a mistake, nobody is going to think you're a bad person because of it. It might piss people off. It might create a little bit of a ripple wave, but life goes on, I promise you. And you're not the only one who's going to make a mistake either. But the way you handle it is going to separate you from the crowd. All right, and then going on to number 4 of the science behind why making excuses is so much easier than just being accountable is the ego defense mechanisms. So psychologically, we use protection, blaming others, or rationalization, which is making excuses, as armor. While this armor protects our ego in the short term, it actually prevents neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to learn, grow, and create new and healthier habits. So that's why I say being accountable can truly get you to level up, is because the more you do it, the easier it is and the better of a person you become. I'm going to use the gym, for example. When I got out of college, I was not confident in the way my body looked. I was a string bean a majority of my life. I had a really hard time gaining weight. I was not blessed with nice big boobs. I was one of those girls that was a woman and my body looked the same as a 12-year-old boy. I hated it. It was so hard. I would go to try to get dressed for the day and I'd sit in my closet crying because none of my outfits looked good because I didn't have the figure as these women and the ads that were wearing them. It looked completely different on me. And so I say this because I really wanted to get a boob job. But for me to get a boob job, I'm like, you have to start working out because you're not going to pay to have something, I mean, in my eyes, like permanently altered by a doctor if you're not going to hold your body to a high regard. So I held myself accountable and I said, you know what? If you start religiously working out, you actually make this a part of your lifestyle, we can think about doing the surgery. Year and a half later, I was consistently going to the gym, probably 5 or 6 days a week, every week, started finally eating healthier. And I'm like, you know what? My body is at a great place. Let's do this full send. So I got it done. But the thing was now that I have that, what I worked so hard for, it's like, okay, we worked so hard for this. We're maintaining it. So I do continue to keep myself accountable. But the thing is at this point in my life, going to the gym is like second nature to me. I probably, if I wouldn't have held myself accountable for so long, I don't think I would have the same relationship with the gym that I do now. And you have to have some grace for yourself because being accountable is not something you're going to wake up and just, oh, I'm just going to start being accountable in every single thing I do. It's not that easy. I wish it was. I truly wish it was. But there are going to be some areas where you're more accountable than you are others. And I say this because even with working out, I think I'm very accountable for going to the gym. My diet is where I am not as accountable. And I'm about to go into a calorie deficit / cut. Basically, if you don't know what a calorie deficit or a cut is, I'm trying to get muscle mommied up for my best friend's wedding. Her wedding's in May, so I'm about to be working out religiously, eating super clean. I'm going to be hitting the grind. And I say this because I was super on the fence about hiring my coach again. And not because I needed him to write me workouts, not because I need him to give me a meal plan, but because I want someone to keep me accountable. I can work out all day, every day, but eating the foods I'm supposed to be eating is hard. And I know so many bodybuilders who are even coaches who, when they go to compete or do something, they'll hire somebody just to keep them accountable. And that might be one of the worst areas I'm accountable is through my diet because I am a foodie at heart and I'm Italian. I love the oil and yeah, all the bad stuff for you. But it is not bad and it shouldn't be embarrassing if you're more accountable in some areas more than you are others. And I don't want to bleed into what we're going to talk about here, kind of moving on, but it's not a bad thing to keep someone in your life who will keep you accountable in certain areas. Do they need to keep you accountable for everything? Heck no. But like I do with working out, if there's one thing that you're like, hey, I need you to be on my ass about this, that's not a bad thing. Because the plan is that you're training yourself to not have to have that accountability partner. Accountability partner should be a short term help to get you to where you want to be. You should not always have to rely on someone to push you and be there. If I ate healthier, then I probably wouldn't ever need a coach because I would be in that habit. I would be in that routine. But since, the last time I did this was 2023, there's no shame in that. Now we are going to talk about more science, but instead of talking about why it's easy to fall on excuses instead of being accountable, we are going to talk about the science of why accountability heals your mind. I assure you, being an accountable person will make your life dramatically better. This is why. Number one, your internal locus of control. So, research shows that people with an internal locus of control, the belief that they can influence their own life outcomes, have a significantly lower level of stress and depression. As a control freak, I think I gravitate towards accountability so much, genuinely because it makes me feel like I have more control over my life. Now, we're going to go into another example. So, I hate that I'm going to even bring this up, but I think you guys could learn from this. So, I worked at a college bar. It was not your traditional college bar. Let me just set the preface or set the stage with that, okay? I was working one night, and to be completely honest, here's my excuse. I had got broken up with my high school boyfriend, or my boyfriend who I started dating in high school and basically dated all through college. We had broken up, and that day that I was working that night was our anniversary. And for the first time in 5 years, we had not spoken that whole day. And I knew, and not to go in depth about my relationship, but I knew he wasn't my person, but it still sucked. It was still a hard change. The breakup was honestly still relatively fresh. So when I went to bartend that night, I did not make the best life decision. And this is honestly, I do want to say this is a trigger warning before I talk about this situation. But I was bartending and I was down in the dumps. And I'm honestly not a drinker, to be quite frank. But people were buying me shots. It wasn't a rule that I couldn't take them behind the bar. So come bar close, little miss I don't ever drink was feeling herself. And this was when I made the really dumb decision. We were entering tips on the card reader machine, and everybody who did not tip on the credit card receipts, and it wasn't like and here's another excuse, it wasn't a ton of money, but I was still taking money from people, which is extremely wrong. And, the night went on, did it, went home, went about my life. I did not think I was going to get in trouble for it. Didn't think I was going to get caught. Didn't think anything of it. And then come 2 days later, my boss texts me and says, hey, I need you to come into the bar. We need to talk. And I knew exactly what we were going to talk about. And I was mortified. I was absolutely mortified. And as a lot of us do when we make a mistake, we try to think of every way out of it. And truly, I tried to. I tried to think of any lie, any excuse. I mean, heck, the girl that I bartended with didn't have the best reputation for doing the right thing. I even was like, I could honestly blame her and said she was the one who did it because, there was no proof that I did it. And I probably could have gone away with it by doing that, but I wouldn't have been able to sleep with myself at night if I had done that. Truly. And that's really what I fell on is, I was thinking of so many excuses to use, but I'm like, none of that is going to make me feel better for what I did. Truly. And so what happened was I went into the bar and exactly what I thought was going to come up came up. And instead of saying a bunch of excuses, I was like, I messed up. What I did was so incredibly wrong, so incredibly stupid. It should have never happened, and I am sorry. It will, if I am allowed to keep my job, it will never happen again. And yes, I got my ass reamed for a little bit, as I should have, but I actually kept my job. And she knew that I messed up, and she knew from how I approached that situation, and that's why she said she let me keep my job, is She told me, you know what, you own this. And I know that this isn't the kind of person you are. So I know you will never let it happen again. And guess who? Never, ever, ever let it happen again. Ever. And that's, it was a learning moment for me. And it sucked. I hated tucking my tail, but you know what? Sometimes you just have to sit with the fact that you messed up. You did something so incredibly wrong. But as long as you can learn from this and never let that happen again, you know what? We can work through it, truly. And that's why, in that situation, granted, I was shitting bricks. I wanted to control as much of it as I could. I could have gone into that meeting, shifted the blame to the girl I was working on. It would have been this whole big thing. I would have been overthinking about it day upon day until, I don't know, it had been dropped or people forgot about it, which probably would have happened. But yeah, I admitted I was wrong. I had to pay some money, like it was fixed, but it would have been such a bigger ordeal if I hadn't been accountable in that moment right there. But gaining control of the situation, it made it move on faster. I hate being in a situation where I messed up. So I'm like, if we can just move on so I never have to do this or I never will do this again, I promise. I tell you what, even now when I talk about it, it's still like makes it freaks me out. I hate doing the wrong thing. And not yeah, I don't think I would be this person if I had it messed up as much as I had and had to tuck my tail as many times as I have. But now moving on to the second reason why accountability heals the mind is because of neuroplasticity and habit formation. So when we hold ourselves accountable in a new behavior, we are literally rewiring our brain's neural pathways, making wellness a permanent habit rather than a temporary fix. When you make excuses, your brain stays in this gear of fear and defensiveness. But the second you are accountable, you almost switch your mindset into a problem solving mentality. Because if you can say, hey, I messed up, how can we fix this? Now you're working on a solution. But if you're making excuses, you're still stuck on what went wrong. Okay? We're shifting the mindset over here, people. I'm giving you a different way to think about things. And then the third reason why accountability heals the mind is the anxiety loop. Excuses and blame shifting actually keeps the brain in a state of high alert, while ownership allows the nervous system to shift into a problem solving mode, reducing chronic anxiety. Didn't I literally just mention that? So that's the thing. If you mess up, figure out how to solve the problem. That should be where your mind goes. Like, let's own this up so we can move forward instead of dwelling on what's happening right now. And to be honest, I feel like if you are not being accountable, you almost have to always be like, on, if that makes sense. Because if you're blame shifting, I mean, the situation has not gone to bay yet. So it's almost like you always have to be on it when someone's talking about that situation or asks you something about the situation. For me, doing that or being in that situation, I don't sleep at night. It's the only thing I can think about. So that's why, not being accountable, it's not worth it to me at all. I already have enough anxiety. I don't need to bring more upon myself. Okay, now we've talked about why accountability is good. So, how are you going to glow up? How are you going to take yourself from, super prone to throwing out excuses to now being ridiculously accountable? So, one, increased self efficiency. Every time you do what you say you're going to do, you build self trust. And this is the foundation of true self esteem. So, being accountable starts with you. Start doing the things you tell yourself you're going to do. Let's say, today it's a beautiful day. I'm like, I'm going to go on a walk today with Stevie. Well, it's very easy for my day to get hijacked and to get super busy and to get, carried away with things that really shouldn't be taking too much of my time. And I won't end up walking her. Well, guess how much trust within myself I'm building by doing that? None. So little things like that. If I say I'm going to go take Stevie for a walk, I'm taking Stevie for a walk. If I say I'm going to wake up and make my bed every morning, I'm going to do it. Little things like that is how you can start building accountability within yourself. Now, we're going to move externally with it with number 2, with the accountability glow up. Stronger relationships. Accountability is the fastest way to build or repair trust with others. It ends the gaslighting cycle in relationships. It is a great way to earn trust with other people. So, start with the focus on yourself. Once you start doing that, start branching it out onto other aspects of your life, working, relationships, friendships, family. Start slowly trickling that accountability throughout your life. They always say you never want to do cold turkey. You never just want to be like super accountable everywhere, which obviously, yes, that is the goal, but it takes time. This is a very uncomfortable thing to grasp. So, little by little, like I said, start being accountable with yourself, start being accountable with your relationships. And then moving on to number three is emotional regulation. Being accountable for your reactions, not just your actions, will help you stay calm during the mix of life's stressors. All right, lastly, we are going to talk about how you can be more accountable. So, we're going to hit on four things, okay? First thing is the 24-hour rule. Before blaming somebody else about a bad mood or a setback, wait 24 hours and ask, what was my 1% contribution to the situation? Being accountable means you have to self reflect a lot because when you're being accountable, you realize that you could do better. You realize that there is improvement. You realize that you may have made a mistake. So, with that, instead of focusing on someone else, you always have to focus on yourself. Because honestly, you have no right to focus on what someone's doing wrong if you are not looking at what you could be doing better. So always self reflect in everything you do, even if something goes right. It's always good to be like, okay, what could I have done better? I know that that was really good, but if I do that again, like, what is something that I could improve on? And that is how you should truly live your life every day with everything you do is trying to constantly get better. Because if you stay idle in what you're doing, I mean, it's not gonna make you happy, you're gonna stay there forever, you're gonna get comfortable, you're gonna get bored. Always want to try to better yourself, better, where you're working, your relationships, your hobbies. You always wanna try to get better at everything you're doing. So, 24-hour rule. Now, moving on to number two, the accountability buddy. And we mentioned this when I was talking about my coach, but finding someone in your community to check in with you weekly about your goals, about being accountable for the things you say you're going to do, it's really nice. And it should be not a shameful thing to do because a lot of us need that accountability. Now, if you need that accountability in every aspect of your life, I will say that is not an ideal situation. But if there is one area where you struggle with accountability and you're like, hey, I want to better myself, will you keep me accountable? There's no shame in that. Like I said, there's bodybuilders to this day who are winning national titles who have a coach to keep them accountable. NFL players, they're being held accountable every day to be able to compete at the standard that we all watch on TV. You don't realize that a lot of people have someone in their life keeping them accountable. Not a bad thing. Should you have somebody keeping you accountable on admitting your faults, your wrongs, things like that, no. But if you are trying to level up as a human being, you are trying to reach a point in your life, you're trying to improve something, obtain something, get an accountability buddy. They're amazing. They're great. And I promise you, they will truly help you get farther than you even think you can get. And then number three, we're going to talk about micro ownership. Okay. So start small with the accountability. Be accountable for small things, making your bed, drinking enough water every day, getting in 3 meals a day, maybe reading every day. Find something small in your personal life that you can hold yourself accountable for doing. So then you can start gaining that trust within yourself that you are the person that is going to do what you say you're going to do. And now the last thing is the compassionate reset. And this is the most important of them all. Okay. So if you slip up, own it immediately without shaming yourself. Okay. Because accountability without compassion is just more stress in your life. And that's where it is so good to hold yourself accountable, but you have to tell yourself, I'm human. It's okay that I messed this up. You can rationalize to yourself why. You can give yourself the excuses, but don't act on that. Don't project that. Tell yourself you're human. You're going to learn from this and you're going to move on and you're going to become better from it. Because that's the whole point with accountability is growing, learning, and becoming a better version of yourself. Because when you do all three of those, you're not only becoming a better version of yourself for you, but for everybody around you. And I truly will say people that are accountable for what they do and they say and how they react, those are the people I gravitate to because I want people that are going to be honest with me as I am with myself. It's a huge, huge, huge principle, a huge part of my foundation. because I was raised to be super accountable. And I hate saying this, but if you were not raised to be a super accountable person, there's a very good chance in your adult life you aren't. Because not everybody has a big Al like my dad, who is ingraining it in my brain so much as a kid. And that's why I hate seeing it now is so many people could have more control over their lives and honestly live better, more positive lives if they were more accountable for the things going on. And as I mentioned, as we talked about, it improves your mental health. It improves just the daily habits that you're trying to create for yourself. It truly helps you in your mindset and your mental health. You will live a happier life if you are more accountable. The science has backed it, and I am here to tell you, as someone who works every day to be accountable. If I mess something up, I'm the first one to say, hey, I messed this up. How can we get better from this? It really will change your life. So I hope that you did take away something from today. I really hope that if you are someone that is not super accountable, that you can truly be able to step back and be able to reflect and see how you can really start to incorporate accountability into your life more and more. Because it has, I mean, we all deal with mental health enough. Like, you don't want to add the anxiety of accountability or not being accountable on top of everything else. So take control of the things that you can in your life. Take control of the aspects of your mental health that you can control. And I tell you what, at that point, sky's the limit, truly. Because it has helped me gain confidence because I know I am who I say I am. I know I will do the things I say I do. And there's so much power in that. So being able to get that power for yourself is revolutionary. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of Mental Mixology. As always, if you or anybody you know is needing mental health support, please call or text the number 988. We'll be back with more episodes.